Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is Monday, January 11th, 2016, and this is the RLC Pro League Week 1 wrap-up show. We're going to talk about the games and matches from this first week of the official full season of the RLC Pro League. As you all know, my name is Shalthis. There we are. And, before we get into the Pro League, I think it is only appropriate that I address the, well, elephant in the room. If you missed out on Twitter, or if you weren't paying exactly close enough attention during the Pro League broadcast on Sunday, you may have noticed by now that I am a part of SNK Esports. I have joined that team as their Rocket League team manager and the coach of their NA team, which is, of course, as you all know, SNK Apollo. So you'll see a lot of that branding everywhere around on the stream and everything like that going forward. But the gist of it is, of course, that it won't affect my ability to shoutcast or anything like that. I've been signed to SNK since before the Pro League, and I think it was pretty clear that I'm still able to do my job. But anyway, that's beside the point. I just wanted to make sure everybody was kind of aware of what the deal was, what you were looking at, and why the SNK branding is kind of all over the place here. But should be a very fun position, fun job. It'll be exciting to see what we can do to grow the team and climb the rankings, get some big wins, and just have overall a good time. But anyway, with that being said, as I mentioned, this is the Week 1 wrap-up show for the RLC Pro League. So this past Sunday, as you all probably know, hopefully know by now, I, alongside James Bott, brought you, via shoutcasting, the first 6 matchups in the RLC Pro League, which we talked about a few days prior during our RLC preview show for Weeks 1 and 2. So, basically we got 3 of the initial EU matchups, 3 of the initial NA Division matchups, and a lot of information to go over at this point. So, I think what's most appropriate first is let's talk about the results of the matches that we did see, and then take a look at kind of how they affected the overall standings after this first week. Now again, the regular season of RLC Pro League is going to be 7 weeks long. That's going to give enough time for every team to play each other once, in a total of 5 games per matchup, and each of those 5 games will contribute towards the standings. So, let's take a look at, first off, the EU matchups, because those are what started the day. And here is our current EU division standings for the RLC Pro League. And of course, our day kicked off with Crown and Jewels taking on Supersonic Avengers. Now, this was a game that we had talked about where there was a lot of thought, at least on my end, and I think a lot of other people as well, that this would be a big, really a chance for Supersonic Avengers to build off of the momentum that they had started during Gfinity after winning the finals of that tournament 4-2 against Crown and Jewels, and hopefully get a good start to the Pro League in general. So, unfortunately for them, however, Crown and Jewels came out with a rather ridiculous assault, and they looked very impressive and started off the day with a 5-0 rout of Supersonic Avengers. Based off of that and the performance of every other team in Europe, that puts them firmly in the #1 position here in the Pro League on the European side. And we can take a look at some of the other stats that have been pulled from the rest of the tournament. As you can see, Crown and Jewels currently sitting 5-0. They have a +10 goal differential. So, despite the fact that some of these games were close, they did manage to get enough of a lead and take away enough of the goal difference to really just sort of own that stat. And that can be very useful in the event of ties where a tiebreaker may be needed. So in terms of goals, for Crown and Jewels, they started this week off with 18 total goals across the 5 games. That's 3.6 per game, and at a rate of 0.53 per shot. So pretty good conversion rate on the part of Crown and Jewels, and that really tells us that when they're getting into position to make shots, they're picking their shots carefully and not wasting them on potential knockbacks. So it's good shot picking. 1 out of every 2 shots went in. And if we look back at the shots themselves, which are at the very end, that is, of course, 34 shots to 18 goals. So slightly better than half. That is a very good shot-to-goal ratio for Crown and Jewels. From a saving perspective, they were also really on top of their game. 26 saves on their record in that first set of 5 games. 5.2 per game, and 12 assists for 2.4 per game. So really nice standings for Crown and Jewels. Good stats, shows that they're going to be a force very clearly to be reckoned with here in the RLC Pro League. So really good start for them. But surprisingly, the rest of the results were just as interesting, or just as really curious. In the next spot down, the next game on the card was Flipside Tactics taking on Spectral. A lot of people felt that Flipside Tactics, being one of the more dominant teams in Europe, was probably going to emerge and just start running roughshod over their opponent. However, in this opening series, Spectral came out swinging and proved that they are not to be taken lightly. And ended up taking 2 games off of Flipside Tactics, which put Flipside in a 3-2 first week position. So after winning 3 games, they would drop 2, and they only had a +1 goal differential. So these games were very close. The wins for Spectral helped close that gap a lot, and that's going to set them far back in the event of any kind of tie-breaking. That figure is so low. If we take a look, they only scored 10 goals across all 5 games, so basically 2 per game, with a total of 43 shots. So that put them at a .23 shot percentage. Not really that good. I mean, if you take a look at it, Crown and Jewels had more than double the shot production than Flipside Tactics based off of the results here. So really good shot output by Crown and Jewels, and Flipside not too hot, kind of slow on that. The assists, 7 assists, 1.4 per game, and total saves, only 15 for 3 per game, so they didn't face a lot of challenging shots that required them to, really break out of the net or anything like that. So all in all, a decent showing by Flipside. We're going to have to see how they fare next week, and if they can find back their footing. And we'll talk again about the Week 2 RLC Pro League results before we end things tonight. So don't you worry about that. Alright, so with that said, final match of the EU side that took place this past Sunday was My XMG taking on SK Gaming. So probably less of a surprising result in this case. We do know that My XMG was in a bit of a downturn in recent weeks. Results weren't quite as nice and shiny as we were hoping, but in that case, they still managed to claim a couple of games off of SK Gaming, who certainly dealt with a bit of trouble in this past Friday with the team changes, which I'm sure kind of rattled them a little bit and caused them to play not at their most optimal. If we take a look at the standings, despite finishing 3-2, they only scored 12 goals across all 5 games, had 11 assists. Their shot percentage was .39, not too bad, because that came off with 31 shots. So good production out of SK Gaming, but it only resulted in 3 wins. So those are the teams with the winning record here in the European side of the Pro League. If we look at the remaining teams, My XMG, of course, who did end up losing to SK Gaming, they both scored the same amount of goals, so there will be no goal differential advantage for either team, but the shot percentage was much lower, only .28 goals per shot out of 43 shots on net, only 12 goals. So production needs to change up a little bit for My XMG. Their shot choices might need a bit of evaluation, but otherwise they're looking to be on a fairly good start. Same thing for Spectral. Now they're only going to fall into 5th place because of the -1 goal differential that they have. So as we can see here, obviously My XMG has that slight advantage. Only 9 goals for Spectral across all 5 games, but the shot percentage was good, .31. So that clearly means that they made good shot choices against Flipside and just had good overall performance. So a nice start for Spectral. Supersonic Avengers, however, they're struggling. We'll definitely put it that way. They had a rough 5 games that puts them at 0-5 in the European division. Of course, that -10 goal differential is going to be really hard to claw back from. So they've got a lot of work in store kind of going forward here. They only had 8 goals, total of 1.6, but a .22 shot percentage, so not as rough as what happened for Flipside Tactics, just in terms of shots per goal, or goals per shot even, because out of 37 shots on net, only 8 went in, so still a bit of a shaky start. I think Flipside definitely needs to, or Supersonic Avengers, I should say, definitely needs to reevaluate whatever strategy they were using and hopefully come into Week 2 with a little better of an approach. So, a bit rough. And of course, Noble Esports did not play in Week 1 of the Pro League. They had their bye week during this first week. So we will see them again this Sunday when Week 2 kicks off. So there is your European start to the Pro League. Now, as you know, if you tuned in Sunday, it was back-to-back matches, 6 in total. And we're moving on to the final 3 matches of the day, which involved the North American region of the RLC Pro League. So here is your NA results after Week 1. This is what we're looking at right now. So let us talk about the performances of these teams. Now, if the games started off with Nexus Esports taking on SNK Apollo. And you can see right now both of those teams are sitting at 3 and 4 in the league. And a very surprising result that SNK Apollo sits just a little bit above Never on Target, who finished with a lower goal differential due to their performance against Kings of Urban. So, in this, Nexus would end up taking 3 out of the 5 games against SNK Apollo. But a very good showing overall, honestly, between these two teams. Very nice out of course, SNK Apollo. You know, I've got to root. Now that I'm not shoutcasting, I can root a little bit for my boys. But they did a very good job in claiming a couple games off of Nexus. They weren't able to take the advantage in the series, but it is a good start. If we take a look at the goal situation, 13 for Nexus, 11 for SNK Apollo. Shot percentage, pretty good, about the same, if we look at both of those. So, all in all, a very good showing by both teams. The assists, not quite on point for SNK, so a little bit more in the range of getting a lot of solo goals. So, with that being said, though, a very good start, I think, for both teams to get the ball rolling here in the Pro League. That moved us into Failure to Launch, taking on iBuyPower Cosmic. So, with that setup, this was a very big showing for Cosmic. It was a good chance for Failure to Launch to try and show why they belonged in the Pro League, and despite the fact that they went 5-0 against iBuyPower Cosmic, or 0-5, if you want to look at it from that perspective, they still had a pretty decent showing just in terms of the gameplay. They just dealt with a very challenging Cosmic team. So if we look at iBuyPower Cosmic, of course, they are at the top of the division, number 1 with 5 wins, no losses, and a +10 goal differential. So once again, they had that huge goal differential advantage, just like Crown and Jewels on the EU side, which really owns them, that number 1 spot right now. If we take a look at overall goals, though, not nearly as much offense here on the NA side as we saw on the EU side. So, 14 total goals for Cosmic, 2.8 per goal, and a .33 shot percentage. So, decent, but not the top. That would be Kings of Urban, who actually had the top shot percentage for the event. For at least the NA side, I should say. If we move on, assists, you know, again, high assists, and that's pretty typical for Cosmic. It's always a setup, a multi-member approach when they attack the net. So 12 assists, 2.4 per game, 22 saves, and 42 shots on net. So, all-right performance for the top 4 teams here in the Pro League, all over .3. So pretty good overall, but Cosmic has a nice, secure hold on that top spot, and unfortunately, Failure to Launch failed to launch, as was said in the chat. A very rough time for Failure to Launch. 0-5 off of that match against Cosmic, -10 goal differential, only 4 goals for a .12 shot percentage. So, not really the sort of start that I think they wanted here. Really rough. But we can see only 3 assists, 23 saves, so a good save percentage. They actually led in terms of overall saves and saves per goal. So, or saves per game, excuse me. So, Defensively, they were working pretty well, but that mostly has to do with the fact that they faced 42 shots in total and really had to fight that off. So 33 shots in total, 6.6 per game, but Failure to Launch has a lot of work to do before they can really challenge in the Pro League. And of course, Orange Creamsicle did not play this past week. But the final game of this past week 1 was Kings of Urban taking on Never on Target, a matchup between two #1 highly ranked teams in the North American region. And it was only a split 3-2 in that series. But we can very clearly see that the goal differential was much higher. The assists were looking really good for Kings of Urban, so a lot of teamwork there. Shot percentage, .39. So Kings of Urban would lead the NA division in shot percentage. And just solid performance overall there on the part of Kings of Urban. Only 2 wins for Never on Target, and it ended up costing them due to that goal differential. So it stuck them down in 5th place in this league. So they're hanging out below SNK Apollo, which is a little surprising, all things considered, as well as Nexus Esports and their opponents, Kings of Urban. So a bit of a rough start for some teams, but they do have 6 more weeks left to play. Well, 5 more games at least for the teams that are listed here, the ones who actually performed. So there are your standings for this first week of the RLC Pro League. Those were your matches. So very lopsided wins for Crown and Jewels as well as iBuyPower Cosmic. Really good showing by both of those teams, and some very surprising results out of Spectral as well as SNK Apollo, who ended up taking 2 games each respectively to show that they definitely belong in the Pro League. So with that being said, that's your week 1. Let's take a quick look at our week 2 matches. So this is what we get next week, this Sunday. These are your matchups. So Flipside Tactics will be taking on Crown and Jewels. Now's a chance to see if Flipside can recover from a comparatively lackluster performance, considering how they usually fare in these major events, to see if they can really throttle the #1 team in the European region right now. So Flipside has Crown and Jewels. Spectral will be taking on Supersonic Avengers. This could be a very good chance for Spectral to build up some momentum based off of their performance and take advantage of the lack thereof from Supersonic Avengers. So a big showing there could happen for Spectral, and MyXMG will take on Noble Esports, who finally makes their RLC Pro League debut this next Sunday. So that should be very interesting. We haven't seen Noble in a little bit, so now we're going to get a chance to see if Noble belongs in the Pro League and how well they're going to fare against SNK. On the NA side, Team Knot, hoping to recover a little bit after their difficult series against Kings of Urban. They're going to go up against iBuyPower Cosmic, who has a 5-0 record right now. Nexus is going to have to stare down the barrel of Orange Creamsicle, who will be coming into the Pro League for their first matchup. So that's a very difficult contest there. And Kings of Urban will be meeting up with Failure to Launch. So Failure to Launch has a very rough first couple of weeks here in the Pro League. And just focusing on Failure to Launch for a second, if we look at week 3, that is, they're going to have to then take on Never on Target. So Failure to Launch has to deal with iBuyPower Cosmic, Kings of Urban, and Team Knot in their first 3 weeks before they get a little bit of a reprieve in taking on SNK Apollo. Or I'm sorry, they're taking on Orange Creamsicle, so never mind, not much of a reprieve. And then they finally get a bye in week 5. So Failure to Launch has to play for 4 straight weeks, dealing against some of the top teams in North America before they get a bye and a chance to recover a bit before they take on their 2 remaining teams. So it's going to be a difficult task for Failure to Launch to actually make it out of the NA division. Hopefully, you know, that they will challenge some things and actually have a fair position. So we'll see how things go for all of the teams involved here. But this is your Week 2 schedule. This is what you'll see this Sunday at 1 o'clock Eastern. So I hope you are looking forward to that. But in any event, let's get back into here. Is my chat box working? I don't see it working. Well, we'll find out. We'll get to that later. You know, I think I know why, actually. I have to add this as a, right there. I think that should do it. We will get this. Sort of. I'm gonna fix this thing. Just you watch. There we go. Alright, anyway. So... Oops. Of course, that would be how that box is broken in. Thanks, Marky. Much appreciated. So with that being said, we've gone over the stats for both divisions of the Pro League. We talked about the results. So now I want to know, does anybody have any questions or comments about this first week of the RLC Pro League or the upcoming week? Because we got week 2 on the horizon. So now's your chance to ask any questions you may have about Pro League, now that we've kind of covered things a little bit and talked about the results. So speak now or forever hold your peace. But players of the week. Well, that's a very good question. Now, one advantage is if you go to the rocket-league.com/pro league, that is the official site of the RLC Pro League, and we can see the results, individual player rankings or player stats, and see who performed. And really, from the offensive standpoint, Fireburner was really dominant in terms of his total goals and goals per game and goals per shot. He had a .67 shot percentage, just very solid results. Lichinio also placing with 8 goals in total, and 1.6 per game, but his shot percentage did not crack the top 5, so a little bit difficult there. In terms of team results, I mean, we've got the members of Crown and Jewels really all over the place here. Pashy and Siki both had 7 goals in total, and from a shot percentage standpoint, Siki was shooting at a .58, Yeezy at a .57, Pashy at a .47. So the entire team placed in the top 5 of per shot results. In the more playmaker side, Jacob, of course, with the assists. We talked about that quite a bit during the Pro League, that Jacob just had very solid results in terms of setting up Fireburner or even Moses quite a bit. But on the saving side, Dedu really shined on SNK, or SK, excuse me, on SK. 13 saves in total, 12 for Yeezy, who was also a big defensive wall, practically. But Geno Cop, for a failure to launch, came in with 10 saves to break the top 5 there. So that's really good performance by him. Remco on Spectral had 10 saves, Fireburner with 9, so good defensive showing across the board, though mostly EU showing up on these results here. If we take a look at overall shots, now shots were just the amount of chances taken on goal. Kronovi leading the pack from IBP Cosmic, 19 shots on goal. Both Lichinio and Cooksier had 18 shots on goal. Turbo Pulsa and Sad Jr. would round out the bottom with 16. So those are your top 5 in terms of overall shots. So I don't know if I'd say who the best player was. There's just really solid performance across the board. Depends on what you're looking at. You know, in terms of just quality of production, you know, you clearly have to look at Fireburner, who had the best shot percentage for the day. So offensively, he was in a good place. Saves-wise, Dedu lead the pack, 13 saves. So defensively, he was on point. All right. What is my relationship with SNK? I am the team manager and coach for the Rocket League division of SNK Esports. No, it will not affect my ability to rank, because if my team doesn't perform well, then I'll be the first one and the loudest one about what we can do to get better. And I'm not going to reward anybody with flattering words or positions on power rankings for no reason. I have pride and integrity, and I'm not going to jeopardize that. Anyway, Who's the best looking Rocket League player? I don't know, because I don't play Rocket League. Anyway. Is Kings of Urban going to be #1 in NA, and what is your opinion of CA, I guess, Cosmic losing their position? I don't know if Kings of Urban is going to be #1. I don't really know for sure. They had very good showing at the ESL Monthly Finals. Despite the performance that we saw out of Cosmic this past week in the Pro League, it was against a team that they really should have beaten 5-0. So I don't know if that's going to carry a lot of weight, but despite that. What do I think of Yemen leaving SK? It's what he wanted, and frankly, it's good for them. You know, it's good to have a player who's not going to be like that on your team. Plain and simple. What are your thoughts on Flo? Flo's an excellent player. He's a very, very talented individual. He's been a great addition to SNK Esports. He's obviously been on the team before I have, so we know that. But yeah, it's been really good to have Flo on the squad, and he really showed up and had some pretty good plays during the Pro League. There's certainly some work to be done, obviously just overall, because it's not an individual game. It is very much a team game, and just individual talent will not carry you all the way. Why were you not given an offer? I don't think Flipside Tactics needs a coach. Nor do I think you guys could be coached. You just want that so I'd be part of the team, I bet. Alright, I'm trying to get caught up here. Woody just tuned in. What did you miss? We went over the standings for the Pro League. We'll do that again, though. It's not going to be the last time. We're going to go back to the standings shortly. And, of course, we'll preview Week 2. I have an intro screen. I usually intro for just a couple minutes to give everybody a chance to realize I'm on, load up the stream, get everything working, and, to give myself time to make sure everything's working, too. But, yeah, I do have that. How much bad is Marky Duda? I have said it before, I will say it again. I consider Marky to be one of the best players, if not the best player, of this game right now. So I stand by that. That is for sure. Alright, I'm trying to get caught up. What is a Shalthis? This is a Shalthis. This guy, right here. I don't know what you want. This is it. When will the game start? No games. Just talk. Maybe I'll play a little bit later on, but we're talking about Pro League right now. So, that is it. Well, alright, well, while we are waiting on that, let's pop back and take a look at our standings. So, here, once again, is a look at the EU division. So, the European division, these are the current standings after Week 1 of the results we've seen thus far. So, as you can see, Crown and Jewels leading the pack 5-0, right there. Flipside Tactics coming in at second place with 3-2 with a +1 goal differential. SK Gaming 3-2 with a 0 goal differential. MyXMG 2-3, 0 goal differential. Spectral 2-3 with a -1. And Supersonic Avengers, unfortunately, 0-5 with a -10. So they are deep at the lower part of this list here, and the only reason Noble isn't above them right now is because they haven't played yet. So we'll have to see how this changes around after next week. But this is what the current standings are for Europe. And you can see it's actually a very close position for a lot of these teams. Yeah, Crown and Jewels has a pretty solid grasp on first place. But if you go down the list, Flipside, SK, MyXMG, Spectral, they are all one game or one goal away from moving ahead of each other. So it is a very, very close race between spots 2 and 5 here in the EU division. But in NA, we'll take a look at that. Of course, leading the pack, just like Crown and Jewels, is iBuyPower Cosmic, 5-0 with a 10 goal differential. Kings of Urban, 3-2 with a +6. Nexus Esports, 3-2 with a +2. SNK Apollo, 2-3 with a -2. So again, fairly close there between 4 and 5, or sorry, 3 and 4. Never on target, 2-3 with a -6, so they've got a little bit of work to do. And failure to launch, 0-5, -10. They are definitely have their work cut out for them, to say the least. And Orange Creamsicle will make their league debut this Sunday. And those of you who are asking, here is a look at the matches for next week. So there are your matches for this week. Again, every matchup is a 5-game set. That allows teams that get a win or two. There's a reason that we don't use a best-of-5 setup, and that's because we want to allow teams who get a win or two to earn something for that. You know, we want to make there to be an advantage between winning 4 games versus winning 3 games. So there's a benefit to play all 5 games in every set. And this is the game. These are the teams that are going to be playing this Sunday. Flipside taking on Crown and Jewels, Spectral versus Supersonic Avengers, My XMG taking on Noble Esports, iBuyPower Cosmic versus Never on Target, Nexus Esports versus Orange Creamsicle, and Kings of Urban versus Failure to Launch. So this is your Week 2 lineup. But there you have it. Remember, this is a league, so wins count, wins carry over. It is going to be 7 weeks long, so there's a lot of Rocket League left. All right, so a little bit of response. Let me address the chat here, since we've got some questions. I'll leave the schedule up for now. Thoughts on a gauntlet for teams that finish 4th through 7th for that last spot? Not really necessary. You know, their performance throughout the season will determine if they get that 4th spot. I mean, if you're a teams that have entered the Pro League have known what the format is going to be like for a long time. If you're not a team that can commit to playing all 5 games and play them at the same capacity, then you probably shouldn't be in the Pro League. So that's something, if teams think that's a problem, well, that's something to work on. Like, here's the deal. There is no exception for teams that are slacking off. You know, I mean, if teams don't want to play because they know they're completely out of the tournament, then that's their problem. You know, every team should approach the Pro League with the same attitude, and that is win every game that we play. You know, you want to go 5-0 every week. You're probably not going to, but you want to. So if teams and players don't want to do that or can't do that, then, you know, maybe they won't be back for the next Pro League. Or maybe they won't be back for anything else that goes on. You know, there's a reason to do well in Pro League, and it's not just to win Pro League. It's not just to make it to the finals. You know, because most of these teams are not going to make it out of the regular season. Only 4 from each division are going to qualify. So I guess most is the wrong term. 6 teams in total will not make it out, but 8 teams will make it to the playoffs. So those 6 teams, they still want to do their best to look really good for other things that happen. Get on the radar of tournament organizers and things like that. So there's a reason to keep looking good. So that's a decision that those teams have to make. And if they're going to give up in the middle of the season, even if they're mathematically out, and not try to be a spoiler, not try to get, you know, big wins to get results, then I can't help you. So it's all about the attitude. But so again, there is your week 2 schedule. We'll go ahead and take a look one more time at some of these stats and the standings, of course. Teams are in order, as you can see. And we will know after week 2 where exactly Noble will fare in this lineup. So it's going to be interesting. So this is, of course, after only 1 week's worth of games, which means after only 5 games for all of these teams. As the season progresses on, you're going to start to see a lot more data here, a lot more useful information that really starts to show how well these players are. But again, we've only got the first week done. There is a lot left to go. And the remaining 6 weeks of the season will help us fill these stat sheets out and see which of the top 4 teams will actually make it in to the playoffs. So it'll be very exciting. That is for sure. But any questions or concerns, comments, opinions, thoughts on the Pro League, on the scene in general? Now is a good chance to ask them. Now that we are wrapping things up. Because remember, the only stats that really matter, at least in terms of standings and performance, are wins, losses, and goal differential. As well as head-to-head. But head-to-head is not a stat on this page, but... You know, the idea here is that the more goals you score versus the opponent, the better things are going to look for you if that tiebreaker comes down to it. It may not. It may not be a problem. But there are 14 teams. 7 teams in North America, 7 teams in Europe. You're just looking at the NA standings right now. These are the European standings. So you can take a look at those as well. But these are all the teams currently participating in the RLC Pro League, 14 in total. Only 8 will make it out in total to move it to the playoffs. For anybody who is new to the Pro League, this all started several weeks ago with the RLC Pro League Open Bracket Qualifier, where any teams could register to participate. If you weren't invited into the qualifier or the Pro League itself, you could try to find a spot in there. And if you made it through the open bracket, there was an EU division and an NA bracket. If you made it through those, you would move on to the qualifier bracket. And the qualifiers were a double elimination 16-team event where the top 5 teams made it out and actually qualified into the Pro League. So, I mean, the results of iBuyPower's first game are definitely skewed by the fact that they played against a team that is probably not at their level. So, I'm sure that helped a lot. But when we go into the second week, they're going to be playing against Team Not. So, when they play Never on Target, it's probably going to be a much closer matchup between 2 more evenly matched teams. And we'll start to see a little bit of that, of what Cosmic can bring, how well Not has recovered, and how well they're going to make it into the next round of events. But remember, the sign-up is long over. There is no sign-up for the Pro League anymore. The Open Qualifier happened. The regular qualifier happened. These are the 7 teams in each division. So, but this is your Week 2 schedule. Again, this is going to be this Sunday at 1 p.m. at twitch.tv/Rocket League Central. So if you want to tune in for that, make sure you're pointing your browser at that. Because that is the fun stuff. Yeah, these are the 6 teams that are playing in Week 2. 2 teams obviously have a bye. On the NA side, it is SNK Apollo. On the EU side, it is... Who is it on the EU side? I have to... SK. So SK and SNK. are the teams with byes on week 2. So they will not be playing next week, but those are your matches for week 2. We'll talk more about the further weeks a little bit later on in other streams. We do have more streams to come in the coming weeks to preview everything. But once again, there is your EU lineup. These are all 7 teams that are participating in the Pro League. And then, of course, these are your top 7 teams, or your only 7 teams, in the NA region of the RLC Pro League. So there's a lot of work to do for some teams. But we will see, because the top 4 in NA and the top 4 in EU will qualify for the playoffs. An 8-team double elimination series of games, and of course the winner of that will win the largest share of a very sizable prize pool. We shall see which of those teams makes it that far. But there is everything thus far. So again, let's take a look at the chat. Take a look at any questions. Which advanced stat do I think will emerge from the data? I mean, I think shot percentage is going to be a really important stat to look at, not just on a team basis, but on an individual per player basis, because what that's going to tell you is, you know, there's a lot of layers to a player's shot percentage. If they've got a really high shot percentage, even if they don't have a ton of goals, you know, obviously if they have 1 goal and 100% shot percentage because they don't take any other shots, that could be a problem. But I'd be very surprised for any player at all to have 1 shot, 1 goal, and that's it after 6 weeks, 7 weeks of playing. But I do think that the shot percentage in general, as we get more goals and more shots and more information, is really going to stand out, because that's going to tell you a lot about the player's decision-making, their shooting ability, obviously, their offensive ability, and just how effective they are once they have the ball. You know, I think that will really tell us a lot as things go. And all we've got, you know, so far in terms of that, we know that the highest shot percentage is on the part of Crown and Jewels. They had the best production in that aspect. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that all 3 members of Crown and Jewels were in the top 5 of individual players as well. You know, Fireburner led the way with a .67 shot percentage after this week. Very effective. But Sikizem, Yeezy, and Pashi were all on that list in the top 5. So it does speak a lot there. Alright, let's see. What can the NA scene do to improve and match EU level play? That's a hard question, because it does have to do with the style that EU and NA play. EU is just very competitive, and there's a lot of teams that play at a very high level. So that's part of the problem, so to say, part of the situation. So NA is just, it's starting to get a little more competitive. A lot of the teams, you know, like Cosmic, like Kings of Urban, like Never on Target, those are teams that are starting to reach that point where they can regularly challenge a good chunk of the EU side. And we're starting to see a little bit of balance on the EU end of not being so overly dominated by the likes of Flipside and SK, and more teams are starting to encroach on that top spot. So, I don't know necessarily what they have to do. We're going to probably see that with a little more international play, and see if the NA side adapts a bit more. But there's certainly a potential there. Let's see. Yeah, I believe both Kings of Urban and I by Power made it into the final. I don't know if they made it to top 3. I know they made it final 4. It might have been top 3. But I know it was at least final 4. And of course, Flipside would end up taking that last Royale tournament over Cosmic. But, well, it may not be as fun to watch, but at least they might be getting some better results, or at least feel a little more comfortable playing. Yeah, absolutely, D-Pants. That sounds great. I love stats, so if you want to give me all the stats that you build up and whatever you get and anything fun that you have, I'm all ears, absolutely. Now, all this information that I've shown you that I compiled into the table on stream is available at rocket-league.com/Pro League. So all you have to do is just go there. You can see all these detailed stats, and they will keep updating all throughout the regular season and into the playoffs. So stats are fun, and we have a lot of them to work with here. But that's the thing I'm most interested in seeing. You know, again, going back to that stat question, is the shot percentage. I think that's the most interesting one. And right now, Fireburner has a really solid shot percentage, and we'll see how that plays out throughout the rest of the season. So, they are. Stats are very fun. They give you a little bit of insight into something that you may not have otherwise noticed, or may not really realize throughout the regular season. Like, especially in my case, I'm in a shoutcasting role, so most of my attention and most of the things that I talk about have to relate to the game itself, like the actual game we're watching. So a little bit of tunnel vision there. But having these stats gives me some insight. So next time Kings of Urban plays next week, if I'm part of the casting team, you know, I can be there and say, hey, keep an eye on Fireburner. He had the highest shot percentage during the regular season. When Crown and Jewels is playing Flipside, again, same thing. High shot percentage. Watch out for them, because they're very effective when they get the ball. You know, they don't waste time. How do you think Rocket League can grow as an esport? Well, this is part of it. With an event like this, that there's a lot of... Because the beautiful thing about Pro League is that there's so much more to it than just the events every Sunday. You know, the weekly events are great, and that's like the element of Pro League. But the fact we can do shows like this, we can preview these games, we can talk about stats, and we can get into all of this information and have these discussions, that really adds more excitement behind the competitive scene. That's the first thing. We need excitement. We need people watching. We need viewers. You know, we want to get more people invested in this scene that know the teams, know the players, know the shoutcasters, know the promoters, all that sort of stuff, and just build that hype up. And part of that's also going to come once Psionics gets involved. That's going to be a big help. Once bigger, higher value events happen, that's going to be a help. So I think that's all a big factor to making the esports scene better for Rocket League. Quality shot percentage. If that can be tracked, that'd be really good. I don't know exactly how that's tracked, but that's awesome. Like that would be a really, really good stat. I would love to see that. And I bet you 100% if you can get that type of statistics out of this, the folks at RLC, like the Rocket Garage guys, they're going to be very interested in this stuff too. So you did not see Kyle play for Kings of Urban in the last game. Kyle plays for Team Not. They played Kings of Urban on Sunday, but Kyle is the third for Never on Target. Has been for a while now, but it's official as of recently. So let's take another look. Well, we've got more people in, I'm sure. At these statistics, so you can take a look at the results, the current standings for the Pro League. Goals plus saves against minus shots for. Okay. That's pretty good. Interesting. I didn't even really think about it. I love stats, but I'm not the best at, like, finding ways to compile them or anything. You know? I love looking at them and extrapolating useful information from them, but I am not really, you know, spot on with the rest of that stuff. Anyway, so here's your NA stats and standings. And these are how the teams have performed so far in the Pro League. Let's take a look at the European side. Lots of useful information. I put it into a nice little table, but you can find it all in different styles on the rocket-league.com/Pro League website. That is the official site of the RLC Pro League. And very useful stuff, but yeah, that makes sense. As far as figuring out that data, because that was something I was looking at when I was looking over the data here. Is, you know, I realized that there were so many shots that weren't goals and weren't saves. So they were clearly those shots that get credited in the game as shots, but don't actually go in. So. Yeah, I think that'll be a very, very useful stat for sure. Yeah, that performance by Supersonic Avengers was very, very surprising. Very surprising. I mean, even I was giving them the edge. I thought they were going to go 3-2 in that set. But Crown and Jewels, man, they are coming in swinging. So I don't know if it was just a really off day for Avengers or just a really on day for Crown and Jewels, or a combination of both, or if we're dealing with, you know, a new potential top team in terms of Crown and Jewels. We know that they are a high-ranked team, usually in the top 4, but if this performance keeps up, especially when they got to deal with Flipside on Sunday, that's going to be their first real significant test here in the Pro League, now that we've seen what they can do to Supersonic Avengers. So, I think Crown and Jewels obviously stands the best chance here of probably retaining that top spot. I don't see them getting swept out 5-0, just based on how they've been playing thus far. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Yeah, that's fine. Just, I would say, once you get the Google Doc up, just make it shareable, and then just give me the link. Like, you can message it to me right over Twitch. So. So, if a team wins 2 games 5-0 and loses 1, 2, 3, have more point than a team win in all the games that a bit, what? If you're referring to the goal differential, goal differential's not the primary, last I recall, it is not the primary deciding factor in terms of tie-breaking. I mean, it is right now because a tie-break during week 1 doesn't really matter. But when we get through the full 7-week schedule, I believe we're going to look at head-to-head first, and then turn to goal differential. But if that is different, I will find out. I mean, yeah, there is a team can gain a goal like an advantage if they have a similar schedule or like a similar win-loss record, but not as good quality wins, or at least not as high scoring wins. So they can get the advantage. I'm trying to figure out how to exactly what you're asking and how I can best address it. Like, obviously, the most important thing is win and loss. That is the ultimate factor that's going to decide your position on the standings. After that is head-to-head results. So, for example, let's say we were looking at the final four right now, and the top four here had SK and MyXMG in the top. Like, those are the top two teams there. Looking at that, you know, if we wanted to break that tie, okay, hypothetically, we'll put Spectral in third place, and let's say that MyXMG and SK Gaming were debating over that fourth and final spot. The records, well, the records are different. That doesn't help. And the point being is that we don't look at the goals yet. We look at the actual results first. However many games won versus losses. So the team with the most wins obviously is going to be higher up. Next, we look at the direct head-to-head. So if teams are tied, we look at their game, which they had, and which team had the most wins against their opponent. Then they get the advantage. If for whatever reason there is still some kind of like three-way tie situation, then we turn to goal differential. The series is not as important as the individual games. But the series does have importance in the event of a tie. That's called the head-to-head tiebreaker. But beyond that, you know, that's its only real advantage. The fact is you want to win as many games, individual games, as possible. And that has been the way that the Pro League has been designed since day one, since pre-day one. You know, we always knew, even if we didn't know the exact specifics of everything, we knew that these teams were going to be playing one another in sets of games and not series. You know, they weren't going to meet in best-of series during the regular season. The reason being is that there is value in having a 4-1 set if you're the team that just wins one game. That one game could be enough to separate you from qualifying for the playoffs or not. You know? So, like, if you take a look at Supersonic Avengers on the EU side, like, we'll go back and look at that in just a second. So, look at Supersonic Avengers right now. They're 0-5. Very rough place to be in. Let's say throughout the rest of the season, they have winning records in all of their sets. But in the last one, they go 1-4. So they only win one game. If we get a team that has a similar result, in the same amount of wins, or close to the same amount of wins, but that one win is what gave Supersonic Avengers the edge, then that's why we play a full set, and we don't just end it at 3. Because otherwise, you know what this would look like? This would look like 1-1-1-1-1-1. That would be it. Like, you get be 1-1-1, 0-0-0, 0-0-0, 1-1-1. And there's not a lot to really take from that. But here, there's a little bit more to having a full-fledged regular season. It's not just 7, you know, it's not just 6 games, honestly. So there's a lot more to that. And it's highly unlikely that there'll be a tie when you have so many individual games. But that is why we do it. That is why it is the way it is. We'll go back to looking at NA now. Excuse me, because that's been up for a little while. So, that is the situation. Best of 5 is good when you need a winner immediately. You know? Like in a playoff situation, when you need a winner to advance, then yeah, a best of series is important because you need that winner immediately. Whereas in this case, you don't need winners right away, you just need results that you can then build off of. And over the course of the 7 weeks, this is going to look really interesting. I'm going to tell you that much right now. Week 1, it looks interesting, but not as interesting as it's going to look. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, so you get maximum amount of Rocket League. I mean, I think the stream was really fun. I had a great time being a part of it, shoutcasting those games. All of them were exciting. Obviously, I've been waiting for this Pro League to start for weeks now. For maybe almost 2 months now, since we first talked about it. But, yeah, I'm very excited for this.